In this video, I'm going to outline the Truss Project with congruent triangles and kind of go through an example of how you can do the constructions and draw up the project. This isn't one where you're going to have multiple drafts, so it's going to be really important that we are planning ahead and very careful once we do start doing our actual drawings. So I'm assuming as we're watching the video that you have read through this project completely. So there are a couple pages, there are a couple different parts to this, and we'll talk through those briefly. But if you haven't done so already, as if you missed class or something and you're watching this for the first time, make sure you read through this project completely first. So the first thing we are going to do once we begin the actual project is we're going to choose a design. And this could be a design of a bridge, or this could be the design of a roof truss. Okay, and they're going to look a little bit different because they're used for different types of constructions. Really quickly, I'm going to go over to some examples. You can just look this up on Google and decide what kind of design you want to use. But when you do that, you're going to want to think a little bit ahead about the project requirements too, and make sure that it's going to suit, that it's going to fit well with what we're trying to do. For example, this first idea won't work. It's too simple. The project requires that you have 3 pairs of congruent triangles. So for example, this would be a good example because I have 1 pair, 2 pair, and then 3 pairs of triangles that all appear to be the same size. And in our project, you would actually ensure that they are by creating them that way. Here's another example that would probably not be so good. Okay, it doesn't look like we maybe even have any congruent pairs. This would work, but it might be a little bit more challenging because this one is kind of standalone. And then you have a pair, pair, pair. So that would work. You would just have to build this first triangle and then kind of go out from there. You're generally going to recommend when we do this that we're kind of building from the inside out. Okay, this is another one that would work well because we start with 1 pair, 2, 3. We have just kind of triangles coming from one side out, and then they match up with these on the other side. Okay, so that's just choosing. That's very much up to you, but think ahead again what the requirements are as you're making that choice. Okay, your truss should have a name. Not every single design out there does, but most of them do. So put a name and then just kind of draw a rough sketch matching whatever that truss is. I don't even know what that is I drew, but it's kind of along those lines. Next, you are actually going to do this drawing. This is where it's really important that everything is measured appropriately, either using a ruler or using a protractor. You can't just freehand draw any of these triangles. Okay, very important. Everything on this drawing must be measured very carefully, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. Some things here are kind of the important keys to remember. Hey, as we're constructing these, we're going to have a rule in mind. So I'll show you in just a minute that I started kind of with a baseline, and then the center line, I made this a 90-degree angle. And then I started by constructing these 2 triangles first so that I can guarantee that they are congruent because I made this side equal to itself. I made a 90-degree angle, and then I have another side here that matches this. Okay, so what I did is I used our side angle side rule. So I've got side angle side matches up with side angle side, and therefore I know that this entire triangle must be congruent to this entire triangle. That's what our rules tell us. That's the whole point of all of this. As we do that, we're going to be filling in these tables saying which triangles are congruent and the rule that we used as we constructed them. And then based on that rule, since I know they're congruent using side angle side, I have to show this is the side, the angle, and the other side. And you could have changed the order of these. That doesn't really matter. Those are the 3 things that make these 2 triangle's congruent. We'll talk about these reasonings a little bit more again in just a second. So if you're telling me that these two sides are congruent, you have to say why, either based on the measurement or this property. I guess we can say something about that right now. We've seen this property a couple times before. Reflexive property just says that something is the same as itself. And since this side is used in both triangles, that's how we know that it's congruent to itself, right? AC is this side right here. And so if I'm going to say, you know, AC in this triangle is congruent to AC in this triangle, we know that that's true because of the property called the reflexive property of congruence. Okay, this other side I measured, and then this angle I created to be 90 degrees. Okay, so let's just get into it. Let me kind of show you an example of how I would start this construction. And thinking about where you're going to start is very important. I'm going to recommend that you kind of start from a center line and then build out. Okay, if you start on an edge and you just kind of start doing, you know, I'm going to make this triangle, then I'm going to make this one, then this one, it's going to be really challenging to make sure that everything matches up and is congruent. So I'm actually just going to work to recreate this diagram right here. And I will do my best on this space. My tools are a little bit weird sometimes, so forgive me if we have hiccups with the tools. Sometimes they don't like to line up exactly the way I want them to.